Revenge films.
One day, my sister-in-law contacted me out of the blue. The reason why she contacted me was because she was going to Mouseland the next day, and she demanded that I go to their house and take care of her child. She also brazenly told me to clean their house while I'm at it. She would be so happy that she would be jumping for joy and get wisdom fever. My sister-in-law's daughter goes to kindergarten, and there were a couple of times when my sister-in-law asked me to fetch her daughter from kindergarten. However, this is the first time she asked me to take care of her child. My sister-in-law and I are not that close, so I'm surprised that she requested me to do this. Another thing that I don't understand is why I need to clean her house while I'm there. I have experience fetching her daughter from kindergarten and driving her home, but I've never stepped foot in their house yet. Also, I saw garbage bags scattered in front of their house, so I didn't have a clean image of their house. I asked her why me, and that I couldn't do as she requested, but she never listened to what I had to say. Of course, my husband and I do not accept her request. When I told her to ask her mother to do that instead, she replied with, "Mom will scold me if I ask her to take care of my daughter, when my reason is because I want to hang out with my friend. Shut up and just hurry up and prepare to take care of my daughter." She shouted those words at me, so I was infuriated. Aren't theme parks a place where kids are very happy to go? However, my sister-in-law plans to leave her child at home, and she plans to have all the fun to herself. I have no idea what goes on into my sister-in-law's pea-sized brain. My child goes to kindergarten too, but if I tell her that I'll be taking her to Mouseland, she'll be happy and excited that she will start having wisdom fever. I was furious with my sister-in-law's behavior because she selfishly plans to go to a place that is mainly for children without her child. I already told her that no, I won't do it. I was getting more and more irritated by my sister-in-law who kept talking and talking, so I hung up the phone and ended the conversation right there. Well, my sister-in-law was still blabbering about this and that on the other end of the call though. I was furious with my sister-in-law's behavior because she selfishly plans to go to a place that is mainly for children without her child. I already told her that no, I won't do it. That night, I talked to my husband about what his sister told me. My husband then told me a piece of information that I never heard before.
Did she really say that she's going out with her friend?
Huh? Yeah, why?
I heard that she's seeing someone. Several friends of mine told me that they saw her with a man.
What? So does that mean she's leaving her daughter to my care because she's going out with her boyfriend? What is she thinking? I feel sorry for her daughter. Apparently, my husband also thought the same, so after we talked about the matter, we decided to talk to her about it the next day. The topic is, could you please take care of my niece for my sister-in-law? So the next day, I went to my parents-in-law's house. I told my mother-in-law what my sister-in-law told me, and I also told her that since my sister-in-law is doing the best she can every day, and mothers with young children should also take a breather every once in a while. And then I asked my mother-in-law if she'd be fine taking care of her granddaughter. Of course, I predicted how my mother-in-law would react. Just as expected, she was furious.
"You went out to play around with a guy and neglected your daughter?"
My mother-in-law was very angry at my sister-in-law, so she came home immediately. Then the next day, "Daphne, how dare you tip my mother off about my whereabouts? You even told her who I was with. Oh, how did you even know that I was with a guy in the first place?" My sister-in-law called me on the phone the next day. Of course, I also predicted what her reaction to the situation would be. So the next day, I went to my parents-in-law's house, and I told my mother-in-law that my sister-in-law is very stressed and hysterical, so she should go check in on her daughter, to which my mother-in-law replied,
"You're right. Thank you for your concern and for informing me about this. I am worried about my granddaughter, so I'll go check on them."
So my mother-in-law breathed heavily and stormed into my sister-in-law's house. Looking at the piles of garbage bags outside her house, I imagined that the house was a mess inside. However, it was not just a mess. My mother-in-law saw that it was like a dumpster inside, way beyond what I expected it to be like. So my mother-in-law went pale and said,
"I can't believe my daughter was living in such a horrible place. I was very worried about how she was raising my granddaughter there."
And that's what she told me. My mother-in-law was holding her granddaughter's hand. It seemed like she brought her granddaughter home with her because of the severity of the situation that the little girl was in. According to what my mother-in-law told me, it was just as I expected to be inside the house, but even worse. The house was filled with trash and it was very filthy. She had a very bad feeling when she stepped into the house. Afraid to see what the situation inside might be, she knocked on the door, but was surprised to see that the door was ajar. She couldn't find my sister-in-law inside the house, but she found her granddaughter crying beside the pile of garbage bags. Her heart pained at the sight of the horrible situation that her granddaughter was in. Despite the efforts of desperately trying to restrain herself from going mad, she couldn't stop herself from going crazy. She clenched her teeth and pulled her granddaughter out of the filthy room. She took her granddaughter home, bathed her, and fed her, and assured her that everything was going to be all right. My mother-in-law then called my sister-in-law, but she didn't pick up the phone. Maybe she went out again with her boyfriend and neglected her daughter because her mother scolded her. Maybe also because I said no to her regarding taking care of her child for the whole day. My mother-in-law was angry.
My granddaughter was sitting and crying in the room filled with garbage and flies. That woman neglected her daughter and went out to have fun. Can you believe it? I will never forgive her.
My mother-in-law angrily said that while banging her fist on the table. Even though I was expecting my sister-in-law's house to be a mess, I didn't think that it would be that much dirty inside. I was even more shocked when I learned that she neglected her daughter. When I looked closer at my niece's dress, it was torn and there were holes in it, not to mention it was quite dirty. My mother-in-law immediately threw the shabby dress away. Since there was a shirt that my sister-in-law left at her parents' house, it was left there because there was a time when it was raining cats and dogs, and my sister-in-law arrived at her parents' house soaking wet. She changed into dry clothing and washed her wet clothes there. So my mother-in-law bathed her granddaughter in her bathtub, and then she made her wear her mother's clean shirt. I then called my husband with my phone and I explained to him what happened. Then, my husband, who also has a child with the same age as my sister-in-law's child, he then told me that he would stop by his parents' house on his way home from work because he will scold and punish his sister. And that is why I decided to wait at my parents-in-law's house. My husband and I, together with our child, live near my sister-in-law's house, so he sometimes gave his niece some food to eat. However, he was very shocked about the amount of garbage in the house. I guess my sister-in-law is the fuel of a person who can't keep her space clean. Since my niece was hungry, my mother-in-law cajoled up a meal and fed her. After filling up her stomach with sumptuous food, my niece started feeling drowsy, and a moment later, she was fast asleep on the living room sofa. She was sound asleep until the afternoon. My mother-in-law tried calling her daughter again and again. However, my sister-in-law's phone was turned off, so my mother-in-law couldn't reach her. After a while of doing this and that, it was time for my husband to come home from work. So he stopped by his parents' house where we were. With everyone in the house now, we were ready for my sister-in-law to arrive. Then, around 7:30 p.m., my sister-in-law heard the voice call from her mother, so she called me on the phone. However, I was stunned by what happened next. My sister-in-law learned that her daughter is in her parents' house, thanks to the voice call that her mother left her. She told me that she'll be scolded by her mother again if she sees her, so she told me to take her daughter home to her without getting noticed by my mother-in-law. I thought, what a prick she is. Of course, there was no way I was going to do as she requested, so I handed the phone to my mother-in-law directly after she said that. My mother-in-law was furious and yelled for my sister-in-law to come home immediately. After a few minutes, my sister-in-law finally arrived at her parents' house. The moment the front door opened, my mother-in-law's anger burst out.
How dare you neglect your daughter and go out to have fun all by yourself? I warned you not to do this again, didn't I? How many times do I have to tell you? And what is with that house where you're raising our daughter? It's overflowing with garbage. It's like a dumpster. Flies were flying around the kitchen waste, and you left my precious grandchild inside that filthy place.
You're trespassing on my property. Give me back my daughter. Christy, hurry up and come here. We're going home. My sister-in-law shouted at her daughter and tried to grab her arms, so I immediately stepped in between her and my niece. Then after that, my husband stood up and said,
You have no right to be a mother! Who were you with in the first place?
I already told you that I went out with a friend.
Liar! I know you went out with a guy! A friend of mine told me that she saw you with a guy holding hands!
You were with a guy today? You neglected your 3-year-old daughter to be with some guy? You good for nothing? You are unqualified to be a mother.
My mother-in-law was even more enraged by her daughter's behavior. She marched towards her and yanked her hair. My sister-in-law then let out a loud cry. Ouch! That hurts! Stop it, please! Then, my mother-in-law knocked my irresponsible sister-in-law down. Feeling completely defeated, my sister-in-law cried an ugly cry. After that, my mother-in-law decided that she can't have her granddaughter live in that filthy environment, so she made her daughter move to her house to live with her. At first, my sister-in-law was happy because it meant that there would be someone who would constantly look after her daughter, but it also meant that she would have her mother constantly monitoring her every move, so she regretted moving into her parents' home. Just as expected, my mother-in-law monitored my sister-in-law, and she also made her do all the chores at home. And of course, my sister-in-law couldn't hang out and leave her child at home, so she ended up breaking up with her boyfriend. Also, of course, my sister-in-law can't ask me to look after her daughter anymore, so she is now miserably living, crying every day. She had it coming. It serves her right. My name is Melissa. I'm a 32-year-old wife and mother. I live with my husband, Michael, who is the same age as me, and our 3-year-old daughter, Hannah, and we're a happy family of 3. This was my 5th year of being married to Michael, but ever since we first got married, we've been renting an apartment close to Michael's family home and living there. Because my father-in-law had passed away already, Michael and I discussed that it would be better for us to live close to his mother so that we would be able to support her since she lived by herself. My mother-in-law, Mrs. Smith, would come over to our house and play with Hannah, and I thought that things were going pretty well with her. However, one day, a change occurred in that relationship of ours, and that was when my husband was told by his company that he would have to go on a 1-year business assignment in a different state. Well, this was going to cause us some trouble. In our household, both my husband and I were working, and my days off were only on the weekdays. I had shifts scheduled on every weekend. Until now, we were leaving Hannah in the care of a nursery on the weekdays, and on the weekends while I was working in my part-time job, Michael would be at home taking care of Hannah. That was how we structured our life. But if Michael wasn't going to be around, then there wouldn't be anybody to look after Hannah on the weekends. The nursery that she was going to wasn't open on Saturdays or Sundays, so I didn't know what to do with Michael away for a year. But that was when my mother-in-law came up with a suggestion.
On the weekends, I'll look after Hannah for you.
To be honest, this was extremely helpful because then I wouldn't have to change my schedule at my part-time job. And so, after my husband went away on his 1-year business assignment, my mother-in-law started coming over every Saturday and Sunday to look after Hannah. Well, Mrs. Smith, thank you so much for looking after Hannah today.
Of course. You don't need to worry about anything. Have a good shift.
My mother-in-law would then spend the whole day with Hannah until the evening, and she would leave our house at the same time as me coming home. But since the first day that she started coming over, I noticed something strange had started to happen. Wait a minute, that's weird. We don't have soy sauce anymore? Even though I just bought a new bottle the other day at the grocery store. Wait a minute. We're already out of toilet paper? I thought I just restocked on our stash yesterday. I started to notice that things were disappearing from the house. I didn't want to question my mother-in-law, but just in case I asked Hannah, and to my disbelief, she told me that her grandma was taking all of these things home with her. Everything was an inexpensive, disposable item, but I thought that I should at least say something to her about it. Mrs. Smith, can you please stop taking things out of my house without telling me? If you could just say a word about it, I would be happy to share them with you if you just let me know. I tried to be kind about it, but this was her response.
Oh, all I did was borrow it. You don't need to be so annoying about every little thing like that. How petty.
And she didn't even try to acknowledge that she was doing something wrong. And then, as we were going about our lives like this, one day the most outrageous thing happened. It was just like any other day, and when I finished cleaning up after dinner and I was just about to take a bath, I noticed that the washing machine that was in our bathroom was entirely gone. There's no way that something that large would suddenly go missing, and I couldn't possibly think that a thief had come in and carried out just the washing machine either. Once again, I didn't want to think the worst of anybody, but I called over to Hannah and I asked her, "Hey, Hannah, remember the washing machine that was here? Do you know what happened to it?" But then, I was shocked by Hannah's response.
"Oh, that washing machine? Grandma took it with her. She said that she was going to use it at her house."
I thought that I must be hearing things. Until now, I tried to turn a blind eye and didn't say much else to her, but I couldn't believe that she would take the entire washing machine. That being said, there is no way that she would have been able to carry that by herself and take it. So I immediately called my mother-in-law and I confronted her. "Mrs. Smith, did you take our washing machine out of our house?"
I'm just borrowing it for a little while. But don't worry, I'm going to give it back to you soon.
"What do you mean you're going to give it back to me? How did you carry something so heavy all the way to your house?"
Of course I hired people, and I asked them to move it to my house. It's so heavy, I can't move it by myself anyway.
When that was her response, I was disappointed from the bottom of my heart. First of all, if she had the money to hire people to move the washing machine, she could have just spent the same amount of money to buy a new washing machine. I realized that this woman truly only ever looks at the problem directly in front of her and doesn't think ahead. And plus, I've never once heard of anybody borrowing an entire washing machine. During that time, what on earth was I supposed to do about the laundry in our household? From that week, I had no other choice but to have to go to a laundromat to do my own laundry. Even though she said that she was going to give it back, no matter how long I waited, the laundry machine wasn't coming back to my house. In the end, I was stuck having to purchase a new one, and it was a painful expense that I wasn't expecting to have to pay. After that incident, I realized that I couldn't let my mother-in-law into our house anymore, and so I immediately started looking for a nursery that could take Hannah on the weekends, and I decided to leave Hannah there while I was at work. I felt bad for Hannah that she wouldn't be able to be home, but until my husband comes back, I needed to protect my house and our belongings. I then told my mother-in-law, "I'm going to put Hannah in the care of a nursery on the weekends, so please, don't come into my house anymore." I was very stern with her. And perhaps it worked, because my mother-in-law didn't come into my house for a while after that. However, not long after this whole incident,
I'm not taking things from your place anymore. That must mean you have money to spare again. And I know that if you have Michael's income as well, so whatever you have to spare, you better hand over that money to me.
out of nowhere one day, my mother-in-law suddenly started saying this outrageous demand. And not only that, but she was demanding $1,000 a month. This was too much for me to handle. And so I had decided that I was going to ignore her about it. But then this time, to my disbelief, she even sent me an invoice for it. What? What is this? Seriously, what is that woman thinking? I honestly thought about calling my husband straight away and complaining about it. But as if to get ahead of me, I received a phone call from my mother-in-law.
So, did you receive my invoice? From now on, I'm going to make sure that you pay that amount every single month to me. And also, if you try to tell Michael about this, I hope you know what's going to happen to you. Any dishonest wife like that, I'm going to make sure he immediately gets a divorce from.
What kind of crazy nonsense was this woman saying? I could just ignore her and go straight to my husband and tell him. But I was so pissed off that I decided I was going to put an end to this myself once and for all. I was receiving an envelope containing an invoice from my mother-in-law every single month, but I was somehow coming up with excuses to dodge it and dragged it on as long as I could, while I eagerly awaited for the day that Michael came home. And then, a few months later, my husband's one-year-long business assignment finally finished, and he was finally going to come home.
Welcome home. It was a long time you were away. It must have been really hard.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the trouble I caused you by being away for so long. Was everything okay with life over here? Did you and Melissa get along?
Yes, of course we did. We got along very well, isn't that right, Melissa?
Yes, I suppose we did. Yes.
Well then, today I've made your favorite food, my homemade curry. So, eat as much as you want, everybody.
The moment that my husband came home, my mother-in-law was acting as if everything until now hadn't happened. And she was acting like everything was peaceful and happy. She must have thought that as long as I stayed quiet, then Michael would never know what she had been up to. No, that reminds me. Mrs. Smith, after receiving all of those invoices from you, I'm pretty sure I hadn't paid them to you yet. I'm sorry about that. When I said that out of nowhere, my mother-in-law jumped and her face started to turn pale. I'm so sorry about that. Even though I had received this many invoices from you, I'm sorry that the payment was so late. Here you go. There it is. As I said that, I pulled out a stack of $10,000, which is the money that I had been invoiced for until now from my mother-in-law, and I threw it on the table.
What? What's this all about? What invoice? What's all of this money? What's going on?
Of course, my husband couldn't wrap his head around the situation and he was panicking. That's right. I had been waiting for this very moment all of these months. The moment that I would be able to expose everything right in front of my husband's eyes. My mother-in-law was making a very big mistake if she thought that I was the type of woman to just do whatever she said and stay quiet about it. Not long after that, my husband had picked up all of the invoices that my mother-in-law had sent me, and by looking at them, it seemed that he understood the gist of the situation.
What's this all about? What invoice? What's all of this money? What's going on?
My husband was furious. But then, my mother-in-law in turn lost her temper with me.
Didn't I tell you to not get Michael involved in this?
But I didn't hesitate in my response. Yes, so I haven't said anything to Michael at all, have I? As you can see, he has no idea what we're talking about. It just so happens that he overheard this conversation I was having with you. She was cornered, and my mother-in-law started to panic, and sweat started streaming down her head. She was flustered, and she tried to come up with excuses.
No, this isn't what it looks like. It was just a little prank. It's nothing at all.
She started trying to say all of these excuses, but that was when Hannah chimed in.
Daddy, guess what? Apparently, Grandma was telling Mommy every month that she better pay $1,000. Mommy was always really troubled by it.
Hannah, opening her mouth, that was the end of it all. But of course, she hadn't told Hannah not to say anything, so it was all fair game, and there was nothing she could do about it.
While I wasn't around, I can't believe that you were trying to collect this massive amount of money! You better explain to me exactly what on earth this is about!
Well, no. What happened was that because I stopped taking things from your place.
What did you just say? So you were stealing things from my house?
No. What I'm saying is, I already stopped. And so I thought that you would have extra money thanks to that, so...
You know, Grandma was taking snacks and clothes and all kinds of things from our house. And also the washing machine too.
Are you kidding me? I'm cutting off all ties with somebody like you! You're not my family anymore!
And just like that, Michael cut off all ties with his mother and left her. Ever since that incident, we haven't had any interactions with her whatsoever. But it seems that nowadays she's living all by herself, lonely, and with nobody to rely on. This is a drama-like story with a big twist at the end. At that time, my husband and I were living together in our new home. However, my husband was posted to a different location by his company, so he wasn't at home with me at that time. One day, my mother-in-law told me,
Could you please live together with my daughter Wendy, your sister-in-law, for a while?
My in-laws, who live a middle distance away from us, consulted me about their daughter, my sister-in-law. According to my mother-in-law, Wendy works from home, and she does receive a salary for her work, but only a few $100s. However, she continued that Wendy uses all her income on her wants, but never pays any money for the house. My sister-in-law, Wendy, has a reserved personality, and she is still young, in her 20s. Even when I visited my in-laws' house, I had an impression of Wendy as always inside the house, like a shut-in, and never go outdoors. I heard that that same sister-in-law of mine suddenly lost her online job and went wild in their house. Wendy blamed her parents for the loss of her job.
It's your fault that I lost my job. It's because of your bad cooking. It's because you guys don't clean my room properly. Anyway, it's all your fault, Mom and Dad. You should take responsibility for this.
She is raging day and night, out of control. I then put my mother-in-law on hold for a while, and I contacted my husband and told him about the situation.
My father's already old, and my mother's foot is injured. You also do work online, so will you please talk to my sister about her situation? I'm not asking you to take care of her. Just help us find out what's going on.
And that's what my husband told me. I then responded that I'd have a hard time having to deal with his sister. However, he said that it's just right that we help each other out because we're family. He then hung up the phone in the middle of our conversation. Then the next day, when I opened the front door of our house to take out the garbage, my sister-in-law was standing in front of me.
Good morning, Madison. I look forward to cooperating with you.
I noticed that Madison had a huge bag with her, filled with her clothes and stuff. So I immediately called my mother-in-law to ask what was happening. What is the meaning of this? Why is Wendy here with a bag full of clothes? I wasn't informed about her stay.
I'm sorry, Madison. Wendy wants to live in a clean house with good food, instead of being in a dirty house with bad cooking, according to Wendy.
That might be what she told you, but as her parent, tolerate that attitude? Are you sure that you're fine when your daughter is living in our house? If I have to take care of Wendy, I'll end up not being able to help you financially. Are you fine with that? When I said that, my mother-in-law said,
I'm truly sorry, Madison, but my husband and I are already exhausted from dealing with her. If you could please take her in and take care of her, even for a little while.
My mother-in-law was in tears. After that, she said sorry again and again. However, she never listened to my concerns until she suddenly hung up the phone, even though I still had plenty to say. Then, after the call with my mother-in-law ended, I turned to my sister-in-law and said, It seems like your mother agrees to you coming here." Wendy then started crying and said,
I'm glad. I'm truly glad because I wanted to get away from my parents.
Wendy looked relieved that she was away from her parents. I then slowly patted her back and assured her that everything would be all right. Actually, this is a plan that Wendy and I thought of and then executed. We played our roles and made this happen. This collaboration started when my sister-in-law called me. We weren't close at all when she contacted me. But one day, she called my number and told me that she had something important to discuss with me. Wendy told me that she wanted to see me. So one night, I met Wendy at a restaurant, and she told me about her living situation with her parents. I heard from my mother-in-law about Wendy's job and earnings. However, when Wendy showed me her passbook and her earnings, she was earning around the same amount as ordinary office workers. However, her evil parents took most of her money, and she's only left with a few $100s from her salary after each month. What's worse is that after taking her money away, her parents referred to her as unemployed because she works from home. So she was forced to do all the chores in the house, such as cleaning, cooking, and doing the laundry. My mother-in-law has always treated me well since the day we first met, but now that I know the truth about her, I guess she was only nice to me because I'm the wife of her son, who she dotes on. Even when Wendy tells her mother that she wants to go out, her mother doesn't allow her sometimes, even blocking the door so she can't get out of her room. Wendy was becoming hopeless day by day with her situation. However, when she overheard something very shocking from her parents, she felt the urge to tell me immediately about it. Apparently, my parents-in-law thought of a sinister plan. According to Wendy, she overheard her parents talk about planning to live together with their son and me. And the first step to their plan is to send their daughter, Wendy, into our house first. By the way, the house where my husband and I are currently living in is a property that I inherited from my parents. My in-laws then sold their house and kept the money in their pockets. After that, they planned to live a life of leisure, dependent on my inherited house and my current income. They then thought that if they made their daughter do all the chores at home, they will have a perfect strategy for their perfect life. What's worse is that my husband agreed to this plan. My husband and I don't have any children, and I'm sure that because of that, my in-laws thought that would mean more money because we don't have to use money on our children since we don't have any. That would mean more money for us and them. That was their logic. When I heard that very sinister plan, rage filled my whole body. I decided that my priority was to save my sister-in-law, Wendy, and I decided to team up to save ourselves from the evil trio. And this is how we came about together and executed our plan. I then advised Wendy to open another bank account and ask her client to transfer her payment to her new bank account. My sister-in-law then pretended that she was not receiving any salary anymore. I then told her that the next step was to go wild in their house so that her parents would be confused and not know what hit them. Wendy acted that all out so that she could come to my house earlier than her parents had originally planned. Wendy was very thankful to me for the advice I gave her.
Madison, I truly thank you from the bottom of my heart.
You'll be fine while you're here, but let's pretend that we still don't get along well so that your mother won't find us suspicious, okay?
Yes!
Since then, just as I expected, my mother-in-law called me every week to check if everything is working out well for her. Whenever she called us, Wendy and I responded alternately. When I answered the phone, I told my mother-in-law, "Wendy doesn't help me with the chores in the house. She doesn't even have a job. Please tell me that she should go back to your house."
I'm sorry, dear, but my husband and I can't deal with her anymore.
My mother-in-law responded, pretending to sound like she was crying. That's when it was Wendy's turn to answer the call.
Madison keeps pushing me to do the chores here. I'm sick of living here. I want to go home now.
Shut up, you parasite! Take over that failure of a woman who has no parents or children.
She showed different reactions to both of us. Of course, I also showed the same attitude whenever my husband was around, because it would be a disaster if he found out that Wendy and I were just pretending. But the truth is, Wendy and I were sharing the household chores, and she also paid her portion of the rent and other expenses. Wendy is like a little sister that I never had. What's even better is that I started to realize, since we started living together and helping each other out, that Wendy is very skilled at cooking. There was a time when my mother-in-law cooked plenty of sumptuous food when I first visited their house, but Wendy told me later on that she was actually the one who cooked everything. Then, when my husband came home after drinking out with his colleagues, Wendy and I purposely made the house dirty. Wendy locked herself in her room and then pretended to complain about the living situation we were in. I am sick and tired of living with your sister. Look at this mess. I can't deal with this anymore. I've had enough of this living situation. Take your sister back to your parents' house. Afraid of my burst of anger, my husband backed down, and he then ran to his parents' house. He and his parents were probably planning on how to take advantage of Wendy and me. Then, a year has passed since Wendy started to live together with us. Wendy got a new job at a reputable company, and then she moved out of our house. Of course, Wendy secretly moved out, and she didn't tell her parents or her brother about her new address or any contact information she had. Around the same time, I showed the divorce papers to my husband. Shocked by the sudden turn of events, his eyes widened and he stuttered.
Wait, what? What's the meaning of this?
But the reason why I wanted a divorce is not only because of my problem with him and his parents, but also because I found out that he was cheating on me. My husband went to his parents' house every now and then, but there were times when he didn't go to his parents' house, but instead he went to the house of his cheating partner. After I knew that shocking truth, I didn't confront him immediately. I could have bombarded him with questions right there and then, but ever since I heard the truth about him from my sister-in-law, I already lost what feelings I had left for him, so it didn't matter anymore. Also, I thought that if we had a huge fight, he still had to come home. I'll have a difficult time, so I decided to leave that matter for a while. After that, I asked a detective agency to investigate on the matter. That's when I found out that the woman was pregnant. When I told my husband that I knew everything, including the plan he thought of with his parents, he was astonished and shocked. Of course, I also told my parents-in-law about everything that happened too. When my in-laws learned that my sister-in-law was not living with us anymore, and also the fact that my husband and I are getting a divorce, they didn't hide their reaction.
Oh no, our master plan.
They went crazy and shouted obscene things. After that, since the house is under my name and it belongs to me, I drove my husband out of the house, and I made sure I received alimony from my husband and his cheating partner. After my ex-husband and I got divorced, he admitted that the reason why he cheated on me is because of the fact that he wanted to make a baby. Since I am infertile, his logic is that he makes the baby with another woman, and we will all live happily together under one roof. What a bonehead. I can't believe I married that guy. Well, not anymore. He also told me that I'm the only one who he truly loves. But I don't need a delusional man whose head is in the clouds all the time. As for my parents-in-law, they already sold their house for a very cheap price, so I guess they'll have to look for a house to live in first, before they go to search for their daughter. Those three morons had it coming. And by the way, as for Wendy and I, we're ex-sister-in-laws now, but we're still friends with a bit of an age gap and go out for coffee sometimes. We're still in contact with each other to this day. My name is Jessica. I lived together with my husband named Oscar. Oscar was a normal office employee working full-time at a company, and he had a really kind and easygoing personality. I had always loved to cook ever since I was younger, and even after we got married, I was putting a lot of effort into making dinner every single day for my husband, who was working hard so that he could come home to home-cooked meals after a long day at work. I got along really well with my husband's family, and there were a lot of opportunities for the entire family to get together, including both of my in-laws, my brother-in-law and his wife, and my sister-in-law and her husband. I really got along with everybody as if they were my own family, all except one person, and that was my sister-in-law Karen, who I did not get along with. Karen was always bullying myself or her other sister-in-law Michelle, and she would always go against everything that we said. So even if we were having a conversation, most of the time I was left feeling frustrated. For whatever reason, Karen had way too much of a competitiveness, and for some reason thought of Michelle and I as her rivals. She would tell any kind of lie if it meant getting the upper hand on either of us. One day, when I was talking about the fact that I used to play the piano, she would say things like,
I never learned how to play the piano, but I can play it better than you.
And when my mother-in-law complimented me that I was good at cooking, she would cut in and say,
Even I can make something that easy.
It was an everyday occurrence that she would tell really obvious lies like this. My husband knew all about this as well, and the one saving grace for me was that he would always empathize with my complaints about Karen. Then one day, it was announced that we were going to be having my father-in-law's big 60th birthday party at the family house, and it was going to be a potluck style for everybody to bring one plate of food. I decided to bring the pork belly stew that my father-in-law loves, so I woke up early that morning and put my all into making that dish. After I finished seasoning the pork, I stewed it in the pressure cooker for about 30 minutes, and the delicious pork belly stew was finished. It's done! Oscar, have a taste.
Let's see. It's delicious! You're the best! I'm sure my dad will be so happy about this.
When we brought the homemade cooking over to Oscar's parents' house, his little brother and his wife Michelle had already arrived. Michelle and my mother-in-law were preparing the other dishes, and so my husband and I went out to go buy the drinks and the other little snacks for the party. We purchased a massive amount of alcohol and juice. We headed back home, and by the time we arrived, everything was already prepared for the party. I decided to go and get my specialty pork belly and lay it out for everybody, but when I went into the kitchen to prepare it, the pork belly stew that I left on the countertop was missing. I panicked and looked everywhere, but then I discovered the empty pot underneath the cabinet. I was flustered, and I went out into the living room, and I saw that the pork belly stew that I had made was already sitting, laid out on top of the table. And then, to my disbelief, my sister-in-law Karen was bragging that she made it herself and boasting about it. When I saw that, I immediately asked to speak with my mother-in-law, and I explained the situation to her. Ma'am, I'm the one that made the pork belly stew, and yet do you hear what Karen is saying out there?
I knew it, because there's no way that girl would ever be able to make something like a pork belly stew that takes a lot of preparation time.
But what should I do about it?
Seriously, she's so unnecessarily competitive. It's such troublesome behavior. You can just go ahead and give it to her straight.
Because I was given the go-ahead from my mother-in-law, I went into battle mode as I headed into the living room and took my seat. Hey Karen, do you have a pressure cooker at home? I didn't want to give her any time to think about it and come up with an excuse, so as soon as I entered the living room, I immediately asked her, and Karen had a shocked look on her face as she answered.
I don't have a pressure cooker, so what?
Oh really? Well then, how did you make pork belly stew without a pressure cooker?
What? I stewed it?
Karen answered without any confidence in her voice, and so I continued to question her as I cornered her. So, how long did you stew it for?
I don't know. About an hour?
That was when my other sister-in-law joined the battle.
What? You only stewed it for an hour? How did you get it to be this soft in just 1 hour? Oh, shut up! This is none of your business anyway.
For some reason, Karen lost her temper, and so she stood up and tried to go somewhere. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. And when Karen tried to run away, I grabbed her by the arm. You know, this pork belly stew, you have to use the pressure cooker to cook it in boiling water for 30 minutes, and then stew it for another 30 minutes after you add all of the flavors. So really, how did you do it? I started questioning her and making my anger more obvious, and this time Karen looked to her mother with tears in her eyes as if she was begging her for help.
Oh, Mom!
Really? How is it that you made this? I would also love to know.
Oh, come on! Why aren't you taking my side?
If you want people to compliment you, then why don't you try working hard for yourself once?
Everybody that was there was looking at my sister-in-law with cold eyes. She looked around the room and realized nobody believed her anymore. She just said one word.
I just wanted everybody to compliment me a little bit, that's all.
When I heard that word, I regained my composure and felt a lot better immediately. And then the entire family enjoyed my father-in-law's grand 60th birthday. I thought that my sister-in-law felt guilty about what she did, and so I left Oscar's family home feeling really refreshed. But that feeling didn't last long. Soon after that, an incident would occur that would stomp all over that happiness. When we got home, I was relaxing and nonchalantly looking through my social media when I saw that my sister-in-law was posting about my father-in-law's birthday celebration on her social media. And there, she wrote as a caption,
"All of these dishes were handmade by me."
Not only that, but the recipe that I had mentioned to her, she had posted pretty much word for word, and she also written something like,
"I hope you all try it,"
as if to take all of the credit for that dish. At that time, I thought that she apologized and the case was closed, but I couldn't believe that a similar thing was happening again. I felt like I was being betrayed once again, and I couldn't help but to feel a strong sense of anger. I tried my best to hold that anger, and I immediately showed my husband her post. Look at this! She doesn't feel guilty at all. Look at what she's doing instead.
Whoa, you're right. My goodness. She really has no shame.
I want her to cut it out. That's enough already. Even though your mom and I got angry with her, and she seemed to apologize.
Leave it to me.
When he said that, Oscar then picked up his phone and commented on Karen's social media post.
If you don't cut it out already, I'm going to report you for being an imposter.
My husband and I watched the screen to see how his sister was going to react, but then immediately after, the post disappeared. Oscar then picked up the phone and called Karen's husband and explained the situation to him. After that, Karen was left being lectured from both sides by her husband and her brother.
So what was that apology that you gave the other day?
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb with me. I'm talking about your social media.
I already erased it, so what's the problem?
Karen started to lose her temper, but that was when I heard her husband's voice on the other end of the phone.
If you don't fix that personality of yours, we're going to get a divorce!
He yelled. I'm sure Karen must have panicked when she heard the word divorce, and she hung up the phone. But then, not long after that, I got a phone call from her, and she was desperately apologizing. But I told Karen that even though she had just apologized to me before she repeated the exact same thing, and that I couldn't trust her anymore, but then Karen was crying and apologizing to me over and over again. And then Karen admitted that every single day she was purchasing ready-made food at the store and lying to her husband that she was cooking all of those dishes herself. When I heard that, on one hand, I was so over it, but on the other hand, I was also a little bit happy that my sister-in-law, who had such a big ego all this time, was finally telling me the truth. If you're going to lie about it, then why don't you learn how to cook?
Because I've never been good at using a knife, and I don't know what to do in the kitchen.
But anybody can get better if you practice.
Do you really think so? I really don't want to get a divorce no matter what, so please, will you teach me how to cook, Jessica?
I never could have imagined in my wildest dreams that the day would come that my sister-in-law would make such a request to me. But Karen was so desperate that it made me realize just how terrified she was of getting a divorce. I felt some sympathy for her, and so I decided to teach her how to cook. At Oscar's family house, my mother-in-law and I started teaching her how to cook together. It was a slow process, though little by little she was getting better at using a knife.
It's done. Meat and potatoes still.
Amazing! Amazing! Your mom and I barely helped with any of this, so that means that this is cooking that you made with your own 2 hands, Karen. Well done!
That's not true, because my mom helped me with peeling the vegetables in the beginning.
But everybody has to start somewhere.
You know, you've always had such a big ego ever since you were a little girl. No matter how many times I tried to teach you how to cook, you refused to listen whatsoever. And that's why you ended up like this.
Because...
From now on, Jessica and I are going to teach you how to cook, so you better listen and properly take notes. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Perhaps my sister-in-law's actual personality itself may not have changed much, but I had to admit that seeing her apologize for her past behavior and actually trying really hard to learn the dishes that we were teaching her and practice them did make me feel a lot better. And ever since that day, my sister-in-law became really easy to spend time with, to the point where I actually enjoyed spending time with her, and we were able to get along way better than we used to. Her cooking skills also improved, and she said that her husband also never mentioned divorce again, especially after seeing how hard she was working to actually cook him homemade meals every day. If she had remained the way that she was before, I couldn't help but to think it was only a matter of time before her husband divorced her. And that made me think that pointing out Karen's lie that day and facing her head on in that battle was the right thing to do. From now on, I hope she doesn't tell strange lies like that, and I hope that she treasures her husband that didn't leave her for having a big ego. I met my husband at work, and 3 years after we got married, my husband got harassed by his boss. Because of that, he suffered from mental illness. We used to live in housing that was provided by the company, but whenever he hears his colleagues' voices, he would have a panic attack. And that is why we bought a house and moved out of the previous one. As for the land, my parents gave it to us as a gift. And as for the house loan, I pay for everything. The work is very exhausting, but I moved to a department that gives higher take-home pay, and I worked my ass off. After my husband, he got severe depression. My husband couldn't continue working anymore, so he quit his job and started becoming a house husband. But I love to work, so I don't find it very difficult. And my husband, though not everything, takes care of the chores to do at home. That is why I was able to maintain my physical and mental stability. As for our living expenses, we're able to cover it with my work, and my husband actually enjoys cleaning. And as for the recipes for cooking, he uses the internet to search for recipes, and he cooks good food. That is why I have no complaints when it comes to that. Well, it's true that my husband got mentally ill because of his work environment, but in the present era, it's just normal now to have couples like us, where the woman is working and the man does the household work. And that is why the people around us don't judge us, and there are even people who say, "I'm jealous that you're able to work as much as you like. I won't mind it if my husband becomes a house husband, because I want to keep working at the job that I love." There are even people who say that. If this happened in the previous eras of the past, this might not be acceptable to society, and a lot of people might criticize us. But thankfully, we were born in the right era, so I am content with how my life is right now. I do want to have a kid one day, and in this day and age, it is now possible to work remotely. So I thought that since I could manage to work at the office or at home, and because I think that this dream is possible, I didn't really worry too much about it. However, my mother-in-law doesn't like how I do things.
All you do is work, work, work. You're a good-for-nothing wife who neglects her husband. I am sure you are cheating on your husband. You don't know how to clean the house, and your food tastes bad. You can't even cook. You're not being a good wife. You're a good-for-nothing wife who can't even give birth to a baby.
My mother-in-law talked badly about me. However, I heard from my husband that my mother-in-law neglected him when he was a little boy, and she went to the casino to gamble. She even owed debt because of her addiction. I don't want such a gambler to tell me how to live my life. First of all, since my husband quit his job, if I quit my job too, how does she expect us to survive? However, I'm tired of listening to the annoying voice and criticism from my mother-in-law, so I ignored her and left her alone. However, to me and my husband's surprise, my mother-in-law moved out of the apartment where she lived for years, and she settled down in our house without permission. What's worse is that she doesn't help with any of the household chores, and she doesn't also put money in the house for expenses. Whenever she sees her son cooking, she says,
"That is work that your wife Sarah should be doing. You shouldn't be the one who is cooking."
To my husband, doing household chores is a legitimate job for him, so being told not to do his job by his mother, it was a very tough time for him too. Then, when I was about to leave the house to go to work, my mother-in-law said,
"You're not done with cleaning the house yet. So just like that, you're going to push the chores to your husband? Well, you go out to cheat on him with another man. You're disgusting."
That's what she yelled at me. My husband and I told her to get out of the house several times now, but she never budges and stubbornly stays. When my husband forces her to get out of the house, his mother ran to one of the neighbors for help and brought her home. "Your mother was having trouble because she can't get inside the house." She comes back with the goodwill of the neighbor. As for my mother-in-law's pension, she uses every single dollar to gamble at the casino. She even brazenly said to me,
"You should be thankful that I'm allowing you to work, so at least give me pocket money."
The reason why I work hard every day is not to sponsor my mother-in-law's gambling addiction. I finally had enough of my mother-in-law's questionable behavior, so when she demanded pocket money, and she also asked me to drive her to the huge shopping mall on the other side of the mountain, so we hopped in the car, and then halfway through the mountain pass, I left my mother-in-law in the mountains and I headed back home. My mother-in-law had no choice but to take a bus home, and she was very mad and furious at me. I was tired of dealing with my mother-in-law every time, so I said, "Oh, mother-in-law, you came back home? I guess I'll have to dump you in the woods again." When I uttered those words, my mother-in-law froze. For a little while after that, she didn't cause any trouble. However, she started doing the same things, so I asked my husband's attending physician. The physician told my mother-in-law that her actions are worsening her son's symptoms. However, my mother-in-law insisted that it's my fault for not staying at home as a housewife and for going out to work every day, and also for not doing the chores at home. The doctor says that there's no point in talking to her any further. I didn't know what to do with my mother-in-law anymore, so I decided to call my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, who are both living in different states. My husband has a younger brother and a younger sister. My sister-in-law is working in a different state, and she is living all by herself. As for my brother-in-law, he is engaged and he is about to get married. Both siblings have a good relationship with my husband, and they all care for each other. I think it's also because of their childhood. When my husband was still a little boy, his mother didn't give him any allowance. Instead, she used that money to gamble all day. Without anything to eat, my husband had a very difficult childhood. I heard that my husband used to give the food to his younger siblings, and when she started to have a part-time job at a convenience store, since his mother is that kind of person as you've seen in this video. He gave money to his younger brother and sister so that they could buy food. That is why both siblings told me that they are very thankful to my husband. When my husband admitted that he was mentally ill, both siblings never criticized him, and they even said their gratitude to me for not abandoning their older brother. But when they learned that their precious older brother got depressed again, this time because of their mother, both siblings took a day off from their work and they flew to our house. Then, when the siblings arrived, they said,
Get out of this house now! Big Brother's mental health is declining because you're living here, pestering him and his wife. If something happens to Big Bro, it'll be your fault.
That's right! Get out of this house! Now!
I went out of my way to move into this house. His good-for-nothing wife is for sure cheating on him. She doesn't even cook a single meal and never cleans the house. I'm beating his good-for-nothing wife into shape, so get out of my way.
You're the one who's getting in the way, Mother! Big Bro and his wife are living like this after a lot of discussion. I can see that they're both very happy with their lives right now, so there's no way that she'll cheat on him!
That's right! Get out of the house now!
My mother-in-law went crazy and didn't want to leave the house, so my brother-in-law forced to drive her out of the house, and he then started calling someone. He quarantined her for a while inside the car. After waiting for a while, a black car arrived and took her away. When I asked my brother-in-law and sister-in-law what the black car was, they told me that the man driving the car was their mother's older brother, meaning that the man is their uncle. Apparently, before coming here, they contacted their grandparents and asked them to take their mother in. That is why their uncle, who lives near their grandparents, came to take their mother back to her parents' house.
Our grandparents live in a different state, so our mother won't come here anymore. So there's no need to worry anymore.
Also, just in case, to prepare for the future, I think it would be best for you to move into a different place. So please, use this to move out of here.
What are you saying? I can't possibly receive that money? The truth is, we were thinking about handing it out to you when we save up $10,000. It's not enough to show you how much you took care of us, though.
That's right. So please receive this and continue to live happily and peacefully together, okay? Sarah, please take care of our older brother.
My husband and I looked at each other in the eyes after hearing the reason behind their gift. We decided to gratefully receive it with all our hearts. Then, the next weekend, both my husband's siblings came to visit us again, this time to help us pack our stuff and move out. We moved into a beautiful condominium near where I work. Before they left, my brother-in-law said,
I believe that there are different types of couples. My younger sister and I think that the two of you are a wonderful couple.
I felt very happy when he said that. My husband is still struggling with mental illness, and he can't get back into the workforce yet. But I'm thankful for his efforts in the house because he cleans the house properly and cooks good food. He is creating a very comfortable living environment for both of us. And that is why I feel very comfortable at home. There might be more challenges in the future, but as long as my husband and I are together, I believe that we can overcome anything. By the way, I heard from my brother-in-law that my mother-in-law was really brought to her parents' house by his uncle, and she was scolded very badly by her parents and her brother. She is now working in the kitchen washing dishes in the restaurant that her brother manages. I was also informed that after she can save up some money, she will send it to us as a nuisance fee. After knowing that the toxic parents of my husband and his siblings won't be ruining their lives anymore, I thought, finally! My name is Michelle Smith. I live with my husband Thomas and our 2 daughters. Normally, I work full-time as an employee at this company. I got along really well with the other employees, and the CEO was also a really great person. I loved my job and my office. However, there was just one person out of all of those great people that was a real pain. And that was my boss and department manager, Mr. Cunningham. Perhaps my boss never liked that the CEO had taken a liking to me from the beginning, because he had essentially made me his worst enemy. For example, even when I would submit all of my planning documents, he would say that he wouldn't accept my plan and my plan only. Or one day during the lunch break, he actually went into my computer and deleted all of the material that I was in the middle of creating for an important meeting. I can only think that the only person in the office that would do something like that would be Mr. Cunningham, because we didn't have any security cameras placed within the office. I didn't have any evidence to prove that it was him. I had no choice but to work overtime that day and stay late into the night so that I could turn it in within the day. On another time, when it came to the monthly review for that month, I was placed in last place out of all the employees in our department that month. That monthly review was something that directly affected our bonus, so it was a rating that all of the employees cared quite a lot about. Even though I tried to ask Mr. Cunningham about my rating and why it was so low, this was his response.
You didn't turn in your materials on time. And you also don't even know how to meet deadlines for your work. Obviously, someone like that is going to be rated at last place. All I did was give you the correct rating. What? Do you have some kind of complaint?
And he shot me down like this. I was so furious that I didn't know what to do, but this was the department manager after all, and it was difficult for me to say anything in response to him, and I was disappointed. But luckily for me, when the CEO saw that rating, he realized that something must be wrong, and he actually made the department manager redo the team rating. Thanks to that, I was able to receive the correct review and rating that reflected my abilities in the job. However, even after that, he continued with his dirty tactics against me like this. Even still, despite all of that, the reason why I was able to continue doing my job without paying much mind to it was because when I came home from work, my precious family would welcome me home with open arms, and also because my colleagues at work were all such great people.
You don't need to worry about it. It's only because Mr. Cunningham is jealous of you that he treats you like this.
And they all cheered me up. However, one day out of nowhere, I received a phone call from my father with some devastating news. He told me that my mother had cancer and she didn't have much time left to live. I was always very close to the both of my parents, and when I heard my father's words, I was so shocked and devastated that I couldn't contain my sadness. To be honest, he told me that they had heard from the doctor a while ago about the cancer, but my mom knew how hard I was working, and it was her choice that she didn't want to tell me all this time. I lived in town about 2 hours away by car from my family home, so I wasn't able to see my parents that often, and it would be impossible for me to go and visit my mother every day while she was hospitalized. Despite the distance, I really wanted to see my mother, even if only for a little bit. So I explained the situation to my CEO. When I did, the CEO was really empathetic and sad as if it was his own family. He told me that I can set aside my work for the time being and to go and be with my parents during this difficult time. I was really grateful for those words and I gladly accepted. And while still working full-time, I took some days off of work so that I could go and see my mother. Even though my mom was sick in the hospital, she was still the same mom that I loved, and she was doing her best to not make me worry about her. And that's why I also chose to speak to her normally, and I didn't want to make her worry either. But throughout all of this at work, Mr. Cunningham started bullying me even more than before.
You're taking another day off, huh? Who do you think you are?
I'm sorry, I'm going to go see my mother.
Excuse me? What? So you think that your mom's illness is going to magically heal just because you go and see her? If you go and see her, she's going to live a longer life?
When he said that, I was so infuriated that I wanted to punch him on the face right on the spot. However, my colleague who was there overheard the conversation, stepped in.
Melissa, you can't worry about what Mr. Cunningham says. Don't let it bother you. It's an employee's right to take paid leave, so you should go ahead and take whatever leave that you need and go see your mother, okay?
Yeah, thank you, but I'm really sorry. It's still a fact that every time that I take a day off, it's a burden to everybody else in the team.
Trust me, there's not a single person here that thinks of you as a burden to the team. All of us are just as worried about your mother. Mr. Cunningham is the only one that would ever say anything otherwise.
In the office, everybody other than my manager was truly wonderful, and they were always really thoughtful of me. I was so grateful for all of their sentiments, and whenever I was back in the office, I did my absolute best to put all into my work and accomplished as much as I could. Days like this continued for about a year, until one day, I finally received the dreaded phone call from my father that my mother had passed away, and my family and I went back to my parents' hometown. My mother ended up living about 3 months longer than the doctor had predicted, and my father truly believed that,
You know, your mom fought hard to keep living because you kept coming here to see her. She was always so happy to see you, Melissa. It was all thanks to you.
With tears in his eyes, he smiled as he said that to me. When I heard my father's words, I was so overwhelmed with sadness, but also happiness at the same time, that I cried my eyes out. After that, my husband and father and I held my mother's funeral. When people found out about her passing, a lot of the neighbors, as well as relatives and people from far away, came to pay their respects to my mother. My father thanked each and every one of those people personally, and I was able to see in the very end just how many people loved my mother from near and far. After that, I said my last farewells to my mother, and my family and I headed back home. The next day, I went back to work. However, to my disbelief, when I arrived at the office, not only was my desk missing, but every single one of my belongings there were also gone. What? Why are all my things missing? What's going on? I stood there in shock and confusion when out of the corner of my eye, I saw Mr. Cunningham walking over to me with a grin on his face.
Oh, are you looking for your stuff? I threw away all of your belongings that were here, because a useless employee like you that takes so many days off of work isn't necessary to this company anyway.
But within those documents was a contract that was going to be signed with one of our biggest clients today.
What?
We're meant to be signing that contract today with a major company, and that's why I left a printed copy out of the confidential contract on my desk, and there's no other copy of it. Where did you put it? This is a contract with $10 million on the line.
I didn't hear about any of this. I don't know what you're talking about.
Mr. Cunningham knew what a big deal was, and when he heard that there was a contract within those materials, he went into a panic. No matter how many times I asked him where he threw it away, all he was saying that it was none of his business, and he was trying to get out of taking any responsibility for what he had done. But then, as the other employees started arriving to the office, and they saw the commotion, they ran over. But when they heard the situation, they all went pale. I'm sure it had been thrown out with the rest of the trash, and now we couldn't possibly know where it would be. I tried to look for a backup of the file, but it seems that Mr. Cunningham had even thrown away my computer into the trash along with the contract. But Mr. Cunningham continued to say,
I have nothing to do with this! This is your own fault for not reporting something that important to your own boss! So you're going to take full responsibility for this! Do you hear me?
As he said that, he ran away. I was so furious with my manager, but I couldn't just sit by and worry about that right now. That was when I remembered that anytime we create a contract, we always have another colleague proofread it for any mistakes or any missing components just in case. I thought that there was a small possibility that the data was left on their computer, so when I contacted them, thankfully, she said that she still had the file. The client was going to be coming to our office first thing in the morning, but I still had a lot of other materials that I needed to print and prepare before they arrived. From there, it was a major rush, and everybody in the office was panicking, but we were somehow able to collect all of the materials together, and I also succeeded in printing out a copy of the contract. And then, after all of that, the client came, and we were able to get the contract signed. All of my colleagues and I let out a big sigh of relief, and we celebrated the success of this contract. However, after that, the CEO arrived at the office just past noon, and as soon as he did, Mr. Cunningham went straight to his office and got up on his high horse.
Thanks to my hard work, we were finally able to sign a contract with a major company. It was a hard road to get here, but I did it.
All of my colleagues and I were furious that it was coming out of his mouth. But then, this was the CEO's response.
You worked hard? Well, that's strange, isn't it? Strange? What do you mean it's strange, sir? Actually, I just received a certain phone call earlier. It was from a contractor saying that they received a request to throw out a massive amount of personal belongings of one of our employees, but that they realized there were computers and important-looking documents in there. So he called to confirm whether he could really get rid of it or not. What? And so, I had my secretary look into it for me. And it turns out that you were the one who gave those orders. And yet, how is it that you were the one who secured the contract?
Never in his wildest dreams could Mr. Cunningham have imagined that the CEO would know about the situation. And he was completely pale as the CEO was speaking. This time, the CEO had turned to the rest of us employees that were there.
I also heard from my secretary that you guys were all working very closely together, and that you managed to secure the contract with the major company as a team. Thank you.
The moment that we heard those words, my colleagues and I were ecstatic and celebrated on the spot. After that, for nearly destroying such a major contract and for throwing away an employee's personal belongings without any permission, Mr. Cunningham was immediately fired from the company. He had to gather his own belongings and leave the office that day. Mr. Cunningham always had it out for me in particular, but it turns out that a lot of other employees had also had negative experiences with Mr. Cunningham, and so everybody celebrated when he was fired from his job. At our company, the previous CEO was brainless, and that's why the current CEO took over. But apparently, Mr. Cunningham was hired by the previous CEO and was sucking up to him. After the current CEO was in charge, apparently he was somehow managing to keep up the good act in front of him. But I'm sure he never could have expected that instead he was going to be fired and removed from the company. But everyone is saying, myself included, that ever since Mr. Cunningham was let go, that it's become a lot easier to work in the company. According to rumors through the grapevine, Mr. Cunningham didn't have any skills to begin with, and he was just smart about how he maneuvered his way around the important people, but that wasn't going to work anymore. He couldn't find a new place to work, and perhaps he ran out of money because somebody said that they saw him in completely run-down clothing at the convenience store, buying leftover food at half price.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.